Good evening again, everybody. I'm Wayne 15's Alyssa Ivinson, and I don't know about you, but I am very excited for our PechaKucha event tonight, talking about public art in Fort Wayne. First, we want to give a big thank you to Arts United for letting us use this perfect space. Isn't this amazing? And tonight's event is sponsored by the Fort Wayne Public Art Commission. I live downtown, I play downtown, I work close to downtown, but I love seeing art popping up all over our city, and I'm really excited to see what is in store and what is next for the art world in our town, and to hear the speakers tonight talk about some of those possibilities is really exciting. Our first speaker of the evening, an artist in his own way, please welcome Mayor Tom Henry.
That's a new one, Alyssa. Thank you. I, too, thank you all for coming tonight. I wasn't sure if all of you were here to figure out what PechaKucha meant. I had to find out on my way here. If you don't know, you'll find out later on for sure, or for short, obviously, PK. What really excites me more than anything is one of the things that many of us strive every day to do is to help Fort Wayne grow. And I don't mean just population-wise, although certainly that's one of our goals. We also need to grow as a community in the areas that really interest those who might, in the future, want to call Fort Wayne home. I'm talking about the quality of life of our community. One of the things that contributes significantly to the quality of life of any community is its appreciation of the arts. Public art is one area that Fort Wayne, quite frankly, has lacked. Over the years, we've experimented a little bit here and there, but we never really embraced public art as something that our community really wanted to move forward as an offering. So to see you all here tonight truly is a thrilling experience for both Alyssa and myself, and a number of others, too, who work every day to try to make Fort Wayne just a little bit better place to live. So thank you all so much for coming. Marc Pally, who will be speaking in a few minutes, thank you so much for coming as well. This is his first time in Fort Wayne, so I'm really trying to impress him with my vocabulary skills. He is staying downtown, and he really does appreciate what we've done so far, especially this Louis Kahn building. He continues to talk about the fact that we appreciated something like this 40, 50 years ago when it was built. And he talks about foresight and vision of this community. Well, that's what we want to continue. So again, thank you all so much. This means a tremendous amount to all of us who have really wanted to move the arts forward in our community, and this is a great step in that direction. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Now please welcome Executive Director of Arts United, Susan Mendenhall.
Hello, everyone. We're so excited to have you here and delighted to welcome you to the Arts United Center, the flagship building of Arts Campus Fort Wayne. I am so excited to not be standing between you and the rich content that you're going to be hearing from our speakers and from Marc Pally. So I'm going to leave my comments there, but if you have questions after this event, please talk to members of the Public Art Commission. If you're a member of the Public Art Commission, can you wave? I see many of you around. These are individuals who have spent the last 2.5 years getting ready for this event, this opportunity to kick off master planning, to engage our community, and really defining what our public art should say about this community's identity. And I would encourage you to share your ideas with them, both individually as well as making sure you're submitting your big ideas to the Public Art Commission Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to hearing from all of you. Take care.
Thank you, Susan. Don't forget, you still can take that survey, fortwaynepublicart.com, and we have, again, prizes at the end of the evening. Now, I'd like to bring up the principal of Designing Local, Amanda Golden. Let's see if I can get this microphone off this thing here. Okay. So we're going to do a little Q&A. Thanks for being here. So explain first, what is Designing Local?
We are a cultural planning firm that works all over the country helping municipalities plan for public art and for culture. So we get to spend a lot of time in different communities, and we get to learn what's special about each one, which is a lot of fun.
So why is public art so important to a community like Fort Wayne?
There are many reasons why public art is important, but I think the most important is that public art really presents an opportunity for the community to express themselves, to express and celebrate their history, their heritage, and also their future through art. And it's what brings us all together.
Yeah. Is there a favorite project or a favorite moment that you've had since you've been working with Fort Wayne?
I don't know a favorite moment. It could be the noon news spot that we got today. That's a first for us. We've never been on the news. Josh and Lauren were on the news this morning from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Hopefully you saw them. So that was a first for us. So.
Well, we enjoyed having you on the show, so we appreciate that. So what can we expect tonight? PechaKucha, explain what that is, what does it mean, what are we in for?
PechaKucha is a really fun, approachable way to learn about something. Tonight's topic is the power of public art, and we selected 6 speakers who really have a different opinion about what that power means, who holds the power, and what art can do for us and do for communities. And so they'll present in 20 slides. Each slide is on a timer for 20 seconds, so it's quick. It's meant to be quick. It's meant to be fun, and it helps a lot of different people get up and talk all at once.
All right, we're looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you.
You can give her a round of applause, that's okay. All right, so without further ado, we will start with our first speaker. Rena Bradley is both a designer and a community advocate, currently serving as the Community Development Director for Bridge of Grace. She can be found promoting engagement of children and students to adults and community members through the many programs she's launched or led, including Tired a Lot, Park to Park, and Wonderfully Made. You can find her TED Talk about thoughtful programming and spatial design online, and she also just celebrated a birthday this weekend. Please welcome Rena Bradley.
Good afternoon, everybody. As a quick warning, our slides are that way. So if I'm constantly looking over here, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to make sure I don't end this and have a big blank black slide waiting for me at the end for like 3 minutes. Alrighty. So as a member and practicing artist of your Fort Wayne Arts Commission who spent the past decade of her career working in architecture and community development, I thought it was important when we're talking about the impact of public art to talk about the impact of public space and the impact of arts, and then kind of weave those two things together. So first, we're going to start with public spaces. I think most of us intuitively know that our spaces impact us, like the flowers in these vases, you know, what we take in, what we absorb, what we see, what we hear, literally colors and shapes our experiences. There we go. And a lot of businesses and organizations have figured out how to leverage how our environments impact us. So whether it be casinos, grocery stores, or even theme parks, they know how to impact your spending habits in order to make you feel like you are emptying your wallet but having the time of your life. And those are moments that we begin to internalize. So it's very easy for our public spaces, be it for better or for stranger, like some of the folks on this slide, to have a collective identity that's formed based upon that artwork or those spaces. It's tempting, as a result of that, to think that public space only has a collective impact, but it can also have an individual impact. The things we see can make us say, wow, right? But they also create a sense of something called opiated adjacency. That is, they put us on the sidelines while making us feel happy to be there, which is a pretty rare experience. And as a result of that, they can also spark creativity and ideas. They cause us to want to impact and not only be on the sidelines, but to have a direct, correlative community collective effect on those surroundings. So I'm going to talk quickly about an experience that I had that made me feel joyously sidelined. And it started with these paintings. These were completed by prison artists. And when I saw these paintings for the first time, I was absolutely floored. It humanized that population for me, because I never realized that so much latent talent was present in our prison populations. Just like there's latent talent and opportunity available in our public spaces, in our underutilized spaces, like these alleys. So I gathered a few friends of mine and we found a returning artist citizen, and we were able to activate that space into something that brought our community together. And the love and creativity from that project was just abundant. Community members came together, people created more installations, so I think a good half dozen art installations popped up on that corridor thereafter, and experiences like that happened throughout our country. In this case, in Columbia City, local residents couldn't attract business owners, so they pretended to by having artists install, fake businesses on these buildings. And within a year, they had to take down those installations because they were actually able to attract business after over a decade of trying to do so because of that art that was put in and installed. Even locally, here at Bridge of Grace, we've been able to parlay projects, including things as simple as trash pickups that beautified our neighborhood, into making amazing change. So what that number was about over there was that we've been able to see crime in our neighborhood fall upwards of 55% just by doing efforts that beautify our neighborhood. So traditionally, public art has celebrated our cultural values, our stories of origin, and our heroes, right? I'm sure there was a time when nothing felt more American than Teddy Roosevelt, sleeves rolled up, looking bare-chested, but not quite so, leading the diverse collective of America forward on horseback. That is until you consider the perspectives of other people, right? So that question was asked of that artist whose name is now gone, by his son. But that is not something that should make us feel guilty, because it's an awesome opportunity for us to use the arts to reveal new voices and perspectives in our community. Several artists do that in different ways. Kende Wiley uses that as an opportunity to show people of color in places of leadership where they were missing before. Amy Sherrill uses that opportunity to mute out the skin color that she feels marginalizes and separates people and that people cannot choose, to emphasize the articles of clothing and style and stance that people can choose that expresses their identity, right? And then when you get back to Titus, he showcases how art can, in essence, reveal or be amended and show an amendment to our history to show the people of color who are behind some of our historical figures. And the point of that is to say that public arts, when you bring together the power of public spaces to affect people and the power of art to affect what we create and having a mindset of equity, you can infuse more justice into our communities. And we're starting to see that happen here. Sayaka has been awesome in using upcycled materials to showcase, problems and the scope of those issues that we have in our communities. Matt Plett's been encouraging everybody with the Breathe and Don't Give Up murals. And then people like Paco are infusing house music, and graffiti into our communities, all using their artwork. But our youth are doing the same, so they're amplifying their voices as well. At Bridge of Grace, our youth are using materials that look like trash, so pallets and tires, to create spaces like these in our community. Those are youth-designed, youth-conceived, youth-built spaces in our community. And that's how we can begin to see not only our places be built up, but the people within them using public art. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Alexandra Hall is the website social media chair for the Fort Wayne Artists Guild and chairperson on the Wunderkammer Company Education Committee. Alex, in partnership with the Fort Wayne Downtown Improvement District, developed a large-scale mural program titled Art This Way. Since 2017, she's worked as the volunteer organizer of the Art This Way program, and in 2018, she helped to install 4 large-scale mural projects on private property in downtown Fort Wayne. Please welcome Alexandra Hall.
Hello, thank you for being here today. That is really loud. If those of you who know me know I'm very passionate about public art. I love street art, murals, sculpture, anything art that can improve the public realm experience. But what does that mean, right? I travel a lot, and one of my favorite artists is Roa. I found my first Roa in New Zealand, and since then I've discovered his work in Germany and the UK. So pieces like this are pretty distinctive, that's why I wanted to talk about it. It has nothing to do with the city in which it's placed, and the gristle might not be for everyone. But I do love these works, and somehow a 100-foot-high mural in a pokey alley tends to get your attention and draw you in. That's what I love about public art, the way it can change a space, how it can grab you, the thrill of discovering it in the most unlikely of places, how it can transform something from an ugly wall to a place to go, how it can inspire you, or at least it inspires me. So pieces like this are kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Pieces like Roa's work, this astronaut, they have a way of changing the space in which they sit. There's a myriad of positive changes that come along with having this random piece of art in an alley or on a street side. It brings to mind buzzwords like community engagement and uniting a city, placemaking, and economic benefits. I want to talk about some of those benefits and back up some of those claims, and then I'd kind of like to talk a little bit about the Fort Wayne public art scene. I found this piece in Germany recently, so I really love it. It's Herokut. I saw this work in Venice. It's called Support by artist Lorenzo Quinn. It's a commentary on the threat of global climate change, humankind's hand in creating it, and humankind's ability to stop it. It engages the audience and asks us all, regardless of our stance or political views, to start a conversation. That public dialogue is a really powerful aspect of public art. Sometimes art can have function. These creative Dr. Seuss-like gutters were in Dresden, Germany, and now there are seating there and a coffee shop has opened up nearby. That kind of thing has created a place for people to go, and that is the power of public art, placemaking. Sometimes we can interact with public art, whether it be making your own art by playing a piano or posing in front of it or becoming part of a 3D installation. All of this has a way of engaging the community differently. So we get a chance to have people of different ages, various socioeconomic backgrounds and ethnicities unite in a common space and have this shared experience. The power of that is really something that can help to unite a community. So pieces like this don't really have anything to do with the community history, but some pieces can. They can talk about our community story, reflect our shared memories. So pieces like the next slide, a Franz Kafka sculpture by David Cherney, is a 39-ton stainless steel kinetic sculpture that's in constant motion. It's meant to represent the artist's inner turmoil, and I wish I could have shown a video because it's really cool in person. So I really like the fact that the Czech Republic has one of their most revered writers embodied this way in a modern art form. This steel Native American sculpture is in Spokane, Washington. It's meant to represent the Native Americans who once used Spokane Falls as a gathering space. So public art can reflect our history. It can create dialogue. It can activate a space. It can be utilitarian, like a set of gutters. It can unite us. And it is fine art made accessible to the public. It can do and be all these things, which is why I champion for more. I found this piece by a famous Puerto Rican artist, Alexis Diaz, in Arkansas. And I suppose that's when I realized if I wanted to see the kind of amazing thing I'm finding all over the world and loving, all I had to do was start advocating for it. So from that passion and a partnership with the Downtown Improvement District came the program Art This Way, because we have a lot of walls that look like this. So the Downtown Improvement District acts as our fiscal sponsor and partner in programming. And together we work to bring murals to the walls. Successfully implementing a placemaking program like Art This Way means addressing anything from maintenance, property owner agreements, contracts with artists, applications, city code, making sure that we have a design approval process with a jury system, and community partnerships that help us pay for the projects. It's a multifaceted effort, and it takes a lot of work to go from the idea of putting a pretty mural on a building to the final result, which is a community asset. Last year, we got to partner with local famous muralist Tim Parsley and the University of St. Francis School of Creative Arts. Tim worked with his students to install a 20 by 60-foot Walt Whitman design on the side of a building in downtown. It gave his students a valuable experience installing a mural and also allowed them to become involved in the public art scene even at a young age. When it was finished, the city installed lights above the project. That level of collaboration is part of the power of public art, that you had the city, the Downtown Improvement District, Art This Way, Tim, his students, the university, the property owner, and the people that paid for the mural, all working together for the greater good. And the end result is really astounding. So a lot of people ask, with all that work and all the time it takes to make it happen, where are we sticking them in the alleys? And it's not because we want to hide them. It's actually because alleys are really underutilized, and city streets and sidewalks make up at about 80% of everyone's city. So by activating these spaces, we're creating part of a drive to come downtown, walk from place to place, but also have a cultural destination in between. So Brian Bollinger brought some character to this wall, so you can see the before and after here in a moment. And just like the gutters in Dresden, the idea isn't just to make it pretty, it's to encourage property owners and businesses to open their storefronts or have an alleyway entrance, maybe place seating or programming in that space. So the idea is to encourage people to buy in. We want the private sector to further activate these areas, and we're hoping that art is the first step. We've always wanted to take artwork from the wall and bring it down to the street or the alleyway or walkway, but we weren't always sure how to do that because no one was really clear on how to get permission. Now, I think with the Public Art Commission and hopefully with their Public Art Master Plan, there'll be a seamless way for the public sector to get private investment and people interested in doing those kind of projects here in Fort Wayne. After all, isn't that what we want? We want to encourage and inspire property owners, businesses, and residents to invest in, advocate for high-quality urban spaces that engage the community, encourage active use, and enhance quality of life. So public art's not just about pretty walls or an Instagrammable post. It's about encouraging more people to choose to live and work in downtown Fort Wayne.
Our next speaker, Sayaka Ganz, is a sculptor who uses reclaimed metal and plastic objects in her pieces, recently depicting animals in motion with rich colors and energy, and describing her style as 3D Impressionism. Her works have been shown all over the world, from Nebraska and California to Korea and Italy. Please welcome Sayaka Ganz.
Thank you. You know how some places can make you feel like it's okay, no matter what kind of day you had that day, and you can feel like you're being held and supported and comforted by the land itself, the place itself. For me, that was the Isle of Man, and I was there back in 2011. And I think for many people, a place like that might be out in nature, but in urban areas, public art can supplement some of that same feeling. So this is my work in the lobby of the Exploration Tower in Port Canaveral, Florida. And when I have an opportunity to make a public piece, I like to try to make the space to feel very kind, like an embrace. And I often reference nature directly, mostly with the subject of animals. And my materials are usually discarded plastic items. This piece is in downtown Toledo, and I was the lead artist for this particular project. I worked on it with two other colleagues, Greg Mueller and Steve Williams. And here again, we used discarded plastic objects with LED lights behind to make them glow like stained glass, and slowly changing colors to suggest the movement of the water. And the shape of this is the silhouette of the Maumee River as it flows through Toledo and into Lake Erie on the east side. My work can only go indoors because the plastics will crack and fade in the sunlight. So I'm really particularly interested in public art in indoor spaces. And I love to travel, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about public art in airports and other transit systems. So airport is an enclosed artificial feeling space, and art can add so much to the experience of the passengers there. This piece I read was inspired by thunderstorms, so it's programmed with the music to change color, turn darker, and have occasional flash of brightness to look like lightning bolts. And what art can do for people in places like this, where there's lots of stress and anxiety, or maybe there's boredom because you have a long layover or there's been a delay, is to get people to stop worrying so much for just a moment and just notice and appreciate the surroundings, or just to experience the present moment. And this piece references just that. It's titled Every Beating Second, and it looks like an organ, a heart with artery carrying blood, oxygen. This piece asks the viewers to focus and turn our attention to our inner landscape rather than the outer environment, and just really take in our experience of the moment just as it is. Sorry, I need to wait. This piece makes you feel like you're walking in the forest, looking up at the light coming in through the foliage above. I love walking through this tunnel. I think I went back and forth something like 5 times in one trip. And there's also animated projections of the shadows of birds circling and fish swimming projected on the carpet. And then this is an old favorite of mine. At the Louisville airport, the wire Pegasus. It looks so light and almost melting into the space because the wire is thin and it's white. It's a drawing in space that has come to life. I recently returned from a trip to New York City, and the New York City subway system has a massive collection of public art, and they have a database where you can do searches. And most of these tend to be murals and mosaic tile work on the walls due to most of the existing structures. I think they're low ceiling and not a whole lot of extra width for passengers. And many of these are also nature inspired, but some celebrate the complex structures of the architectural network of the city itself and highlighting the beauty of the experience of being in the big city. And some celebrate the working people of the local area. This piece is so encouraging. I think I could feel so much better going to work every day, seeing an image representing a superhero just like me. And I think everyday heroes, the people doing everything they can to give their children good home and put food on the table. Some of these mosaic works are quite extensive, and it fills the whole station with realistically rendered animals and water over the whole section. And then this one spreads all across the length of the entire station with larger animals that makes you excited about going to the Museum of Natural History because that's what the stop is for this. But also smaller animals that are kind of hidden away up way above or way below normal eye level so that people can be discovering small creatures throughout the way. And if you're curious to read titles of some of these pieces, some are a little confusing, like the last one was For Want of a Nail or something, and that was a little confusing, but this one is titled Losing My Marbles, and I could relate to that when I'm traveling, appointments changing and time getting away from me. Now, some work can look very futuristic and artificial, even as they reference elements from nature. This one is titled Hive, and it's supposed to be beehive, but to me it feels so artificial. But I think it's asking the viewers to contemplate our technology's relationship to nature. And some invite us to just look around and into the corners to discover tiny creatures living underground, find a little fun in there. And they all make getting from one place to another much more interesting, and it makes me feel like I want my heart to be more open to the world around me and open to someone looking at the same work next to me. That's my favorite thing about public art. Thank you.
I think Fort Wayne International is getting a phone call tomorrow. Marc Pally calls himself an art worker because it easily covers so many of the roles he has played in the art world, including that of being an artist, nonprofit organization director, public art administrator, teacher, curator, consultant, and advocate. He has served as director of Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions, LACE, city planner for public art at the Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles, and the artistic director of Santa Monica's GLOW event, among many other things. Please welcome Marc Pally.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be in Fort Wayne and an extra pleasure to be in the Louis Kahn building. As the mayor said, I really find this to be a complete masterpiece in a form of public art. I'm going to talk briefly about, about the role of artists in public art, because I think it is, well, it's completely obvious that public art can't happen without artists. It's something that should be stressed repeatedly. And the opportunity for artists to not only make art, but to have a role in the political decision-making and in cultural decision-making in general, I think is an important factor for all communities to integrate into their processes. I can't read what I wrote here. It's so tiny. Okay, so art can befuddle, amuse, provoke, inspire, bore, narrate, elucidate, annoy. Yes, and more. People are often wanting to be told what art means. What does it mean? I don't understand it. What's the story behind it? And my comeback always is, well, how well do you understand life? I mean, it's pretty confusing. And to expect that you could understand and digest something immediately and always want to understand it in kind of a soundbite, I think it robs you of the opportunity of enjoying your confusion and finding your own path forward and your own meaning. And I think that's one thing public art can do very well. It has an audience that isn't necessarily an art audience. It includes an art audience, but it includes a general audience. And for that audience to have the privilege of finding its own meaning, I think is a very empowering experience. And then art in the public realm is a metaphor for our ability to creatively consider and manage our civic life. Yes, that's right. So let's take a look at some work that was made without the sanction of an art committee, without the beauty of a Percent for Art program, without a curator, without a manager, no committees, just because artists are activists. And we'll start in my hometown, Los Angeles, California, with this rather insanely masterful work by Simon Rodia in Watts. Simon Rodia was an Italian immigrant who settled in South Los Angeles in the 1920s. He lived near a railroad track, and he accumulated debris and the discarded objects of our culture and used them as the material to create a structure, a dream, an eventual masterpiece, a symbol of hope, a symbol of self-initiative, and definitely a symbol of the recycling of the discarded into something beautiful and something that has lasting value. And I think that attitude can guide us very wisely. So in the 1970s, a lot of artists decided to take a very active role in getting their work out. That the museum structure, the gallery structure, was inadequate to house their creative thinkings and their creative outputs. And some people turned to performance, other people turned to installation work, other people turned to working publicly. So I'm going to show you a few examples of artists who, on their own initiative, made things in the 70s, which I see as a kind of a foundation for the work we're doing today in the public realm. This is a project by, forgetting his name, Smythson, no, it's Charles Simmons, yeah. So it's a little city. We're going from the big picture that was created by Simon Rodia to kind of a little micro environment that you found in a street. He lived on the Lower East Side of New York and would find these sites of these kind of neglected, blighted sites, and he would create new worlds within them. This is a piece by an English artist who, the work is not an object. The work is a form of engagement where he would go up to strangers, in this case Hyde Park, and have them introduce themselves to one another and then sign a certificate that this act of meeting a stranger had occurred, which is a wonderful kind of, I don't know if it's a symbol, it's an illustration of how we as strangers can find common purpose and can come together, which is, I think, one of the things public art does. This is a piece by Mary Miss, who is a sculptor. She worked with in a field of snow. I think this is in Ohio. But I thought this was an interesting image because as I flew into Fort Wayne yesterday, the fallow fields that surrounded this city reminded me of the opportunities of these giant blank canvases of land that many artists have made use of. Adrian Piper, one of the great artists of the 20th and 21st century who recently had a retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art. Her work began as an investigation of sort of what are the boundaries of how we define our space, our public space. At what point does our private space become public space? And she did a series of interventions in the environment which were very annoying if you were sitting next to her on the bus as she was chewing gum and blowing these giant bubbles. At what point could you intervene in her activity, or would you say anything? At what point would you say her space was intruding on your space? Or she would get in line at a grocery store and just start singing Respect at just giant billowing kind of octave and wait for anyone to either respond or not or ignore. Laurie Anderson, great multimedia artist, doing these unannounced, unsponsored actions in this performance in Italy. She was both a trained violinist and a rather skilled ice skater. So she embedded her ice skates in blocks of ice and stood in town squares and waited for the ice to melt. And until it melted, she would be playing the violin, this beautiful, Mozart sonatas and whatnot. Jenny Holzer, one of the great conceptual artists, began her career, although now she's hired by museums and corporations and airports to do multi-million-dollar interventions. She began by just putting up posters in New York City, which had these, what she calls truisms. Can you read any of them? Private ownership is an invitation to disaster. Labor is a life-destroying activity. Everyone's work is equally important. So these what she calls truisms would go on and on and on and on. And she put them wherever she could, walls, buses, whatever, as a form of guerrilla activity. And of course, as some of the other speakers have noted, one of the great forms of public art is the mural. And the first one was Pink, who was, I believe, a Bronx resident and was in the heyday of the New York City subway graffiti museum blight disaster. It was this kind of combination of, you'd be on the subway. I lived in New York in the 70s. It was both horrific and kind of thrilling that you'd be on this completely dilapidated piece of crap subway car, but then there was this exuberant, very exceptional visual artwork, this kind of the two worlds of New York. Okay, now I'm going to get into work where I've had a hand, and that these are definitely complex, bureaucratically informed, highly funded, multi-year projects. But I wanted to give you the preface of how artists are really the heart and soul of public art, and how I, as a curator and a manager, try to be humble about respecting the vision of artists and to advocate on their behalf with the agencies that are commissioning them. Agencies which have multiple agendas, with art being only one of them. So it's often challenging for these agencies, whose maybe main mission is to be a transportation system, to make compromises in their own kind of operation to accommodate the vision of an artist. So this work by Renee Green is it's for the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans. It happens to be in a major building by Tom Main, who is a like Louis Kahn, a winner of the Pritzker Prize, sort of the Nobel Prize of Architecture. And when Renee was hired for this job, she spent some time studying what Caltrans was and did and might be, and came up with this notion of the kind of the network that Caltrans sponsors of bringing people together, and that in the history of California there is a history that has had kind of been put into the shadows and put into kind of the background of the major narrative of the state of California. Mainly it's populations that have not had the power and authority of the sort of the ruling class, as it were. So she picked images that represent people whose histories have not been as celebrated. And she created a panel in the cafeteria of, I think it's 166 glass panels with photo etchings in them. This display of 166 images exists on the homepage of the Caltrans website. And each of these 166 images is linked to stories or to little videos or to audio clips. And they elucidate each of these particular pieces of history. So we'll just go into one, which is, so these are two African-American soldiers who had kind of separate systems, even as late as the 40s. They had separate systems of receiving services, and their story is told, but because they ran an ambulance, they were part of the transportation system. So this is the kind of, here's more information about. So it's a way of telling a story, but it also has a great sense of visual presence, both physically in the cafeteria and on the website of Caltrans. And I have a strong interest in looking at and working with artists who explore technology and how it might be incorporated into public art. It's full of problems because, unfortunately, unlike bronze and marble and I guess some paint, it degrades quickly. There's lots of problems. This is a Jenny Holzer piece in Pittsburgh on their convention center. It's a LED. There's two LEDs on the 600-foot span of the ceiling. The LEDs are programmed with 3 books about Pittsburgh that tell the story of the John Edgar Wideman's Homewood Tales, the story of the African-American community, Annie Dillard, An American Life, which tells the story of a child growing up in a kind of bucolic setting, later to become a great spokesperson for sound policies about ecology, and Thomas Bell's book, From This Furnace, about the coal, about the steel industry of the Pittsburgh region. So these texts are 100% in the hard drive of these computers and are driven 24 hours a day on the roof of the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. So it's storytelling, but at the same time, it also has a beautiful physical presence. And as you can see, one of the hallmarks of Pittsburgh if you're on the Allegheny River, are these series of lights that occur both on bridges and on buildings. So even if you can't read the text, which you can't if you're at a certain distance, this participates in the tradition of Pittsburgh's lighting, which is another sort of community, it's a community tradition. So these multiple levels of how a work gets read, I think, are really important. That some people bring to, some might look at the Jenny Holzer and know about her work. Some people might come and recognize some text from one of the books. Other people won't know about the text, but they'll see it's moving, it's beautiful, it's part of this sequence of events. This is a project in Hollywood, and one of the kind of often the duties of public art is to tell stories, local history, a personal biography, or broader pictures of what a specific location is about. So Hollywood, obviously, it's about Hollywood. It's about mythology. It's about filmmaking. It's about Marilyn Monroe. It's about the headshot. And so Steve Appleton was commissioned to do a project for a building at the corner of Sunset and Vine, which is kind of almost ground zero, kind of ground 0.5 for Hollywood. And what he came up with speaks exactly to what Hollywood is about. There's a sculpture which sits on the plaza. The sculpture is embedded with a camera right here and a 4-foot diameter screen. As you stand in front of this sculpture, the camera captures your picture of your face only through face recognition software. So if anyone did anything nasty, it wouldn't show up because it would be screened out by the software that Steve developed. And your face would suddenly be a headshot. Anyone can have their headshot taken. And then it's stored in a database. There's a roving projector up here, and at night the database is accessed by the projector, and people's faces are thrown onto the wall. So as new people have their face on this 4-foot screen, the people who came earlier and are now in the database get their selves celebrated, and they're kind of like the Klieg lights of Hollywood that throw beams of light into the sky. This is throwing beams of light onto this wall. So this is an example of how a particular community is represented and celebrated. Mind you, I didn't tell you anything about the technical nightmares that this project not only had in the making, but continues to have. So if you are going to be doing a project that incorporates technology, double the budget and put half the budget into a maintenance fund. This is the last project that I worked on. It's by an artist named Michael McMillan. It's another Hollywood project. By the way, both of these projects came out of percent for art obligations from various, this is the city of West Hollywood, which requires 1% of private development projects to allocate to a public art project. The previous project was the City of Los Angeles Redevelopment Agency that required 1%. So this is on the site of something called The Lot. It's the oldest studio in Hollywood. It was founded by Mary Pickford in 1928. It later became United Artists when Charlie Chaplin joined it. So the charge to the artist was to create an artwork, and obviously he wanted it to be about Hollywood and the movies, and he had been a prop maker, which is something a lot of artists in Hollywood do early on. They do screen painting, they do digital animations, they make props. And so he made a series of props which are being photographed by this giant camera. And there's a garage on this site which had been used by Howard Hughes when he owned this studio. So Michael created a whole scene in the garage that is basically the interiors for the movie that occurs out here. And there's 3 holes here that people get to peep in. And as you peep in, I wonder if you can see the detail on this sculpture. These are called flats. So there's just one side of them because they don't need to show the full sides in movies. These are wonderfully rendered in steel. And then if you peep in, there's this wonderful world of detail and fantasy that you get to see. So you have this, as you're peeping in, it becomes very private, and then you turn around and it's very public. And it's completely about Hollywood, how films are made. and the sort of the social aspect of making a film, and then the very private, personal aspect of watching a film. And then there's just the wonder of the accomplishment of this artist in his sort of technical finesse of making these things. This is a project by Christian Miller in the port. Oops, can we back this up? It started, well, anyway, it's fine. So we're near the port of Los Angeles, where all cargo is now moved by robotic equipment. So these giant robotic arms come and take the cargo off the ship and move it. And so Christian used a robotic arm at the top of this column, and there's a light at the top of the robotic arm. So at night, it tracks people daytime and nighttime within a 30-foot radius. If you stand near this sculpture, you then get put into the system that follows you, and the arm will follow you. So at night, the arm has this light, and you will be in this beam of light. This is a way of activating the street, a way of acknowledging not just that the harbor is automated and there's this arm, but also that there's a lighthouse nearby at Point Furman. All of these references add to the reason why this sculpture fits so well in this site. Okay, this is a project by Namjoon Paik, a very celebrated Korean American artist who is often called the father of video art. This is a project for the Anaheim Arena, now called Honda Arena. It's in Anaheim, California. The Ducks play there. They were hoping that a basketball team would play there, but it hasn't. Bruce Springsteen, it's just a big, it's a big arena. And what Namjoon Paik did is he created an arc. Well, it's wonderful here as we have these arches. A video arch, which has 25% of the feed, was imagery. God, I feel sorry for all you people in the sun. Sorry. Come up. These are the more expensive seats, by the way. These are the sombra y el sol. So Namjoon Paik had a huge inventory of imagery which he puts into his work. And we asked him, he said, well, this is a strong community interest in this artwork. Is there any way the community can get involved? And he decided to allow 20% of the data, the visual data that goes into this sculpture to be received from contributions from the public. So we put out a call, please send your old photos, family picnics, graduation, what your house looked like in 1950, anything you want, and Namjoon will go through them and pick enough to constitute 20% of the data bank. And so as you're looking at this thing and you're here to see Bruce Springsteen or whatever, and you're seeing, these sort of abstract images from Namjoon Paik, all of a sudden you're seeing the corner of Broadway and First with, some old Anaheim resident in there. So this question is always often brought up. How can communities be involved directly? And I think this is a really good example because it's completely the artist's idea, but then he found a way to be inclusive and to listen to what people in the community wanted. We just were at the airport in San Francisco and saw Janet Eckelman. And here's another piece in West Hollywood. This piece is 80 feet tall. It was, the hotel has 2 wings because the residents who live up here in the Hollywood Hills did not want a building so big that would block their views to the Los Angeles basin. So the hotel had to be divided, and we went looking for an artist. One of the things we had to be careful of was we didn't want the artwork to block the view. We couldn't. So Janet makes transparent work. It has volume, but it also has transparency. So it worked wonderfully for this site. And here we are at the bottom. It's a pretty amazing feat. The engineering on this is quite remarkable because there are anchors in the floor plates on 4 different floors, and the anchors are embedded in the floor. And the work had to be torqued so that the rope that supports it would be tightened. And Some rooms, unbeknownst to the residents, if you pick up the rug, there's these giant torqued ropes, which could be loosened, but so far it's remained taut. How are we doing on time? I'm completely lost. 10 minutes? Okay, I'll speed up. I'm not even going to talk about this because I want to get to this piece in Pittsburgh by Tony Tassett. These are sculptures situated in a plaza in downtown. There's a series of magnolia trees. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 6 magnolia trees, if you noticed. 2 of them are in bloom. 4 of them are in just early in leaf. That's because these 2 are bronze. And 2 weeks out of the year, the bronze and the real trees are in synchronicity. The rest of the year, they're dissonant. So this is, here you can see the difference, barely. Well, this is the bronze tree. So obviously, this has become kind of like a destination artwork. Weddings occur here. Here's an origami workshop where they're making magnolia flower origami. So it's a gathering place. It's become people often ask, well, what does it have to do with Pittsburgh? I mean, because there's magnolia trees everywhere. Not much, except now it does. It's become. So you can't expect public art to just be about reflecting. It has to lead. And in this case, it introduced a new metaphor, a new image, a new way of thinking about Pittsburgh. This is a work by Roman DeSalvo. I want to show you what it looks like in his studio. These are planks of eucalyptus tree. He had 30 eucalyptus trees, and here it's being installed, and here's what it looks like. So it's hanging. This is a hanging piece in a Caltrans atrium in San Diego. So it kind of, I always think of it as a series of networks, which is what Caltrans does, as we saw in the other work about Caltrans. It's all about connection. And I quickly want to get to, this is a piece which takes dirty water from the roof of this building and cleans it as it slops from basin to basin. It adds oxygen, and then the water, which is the pH level completely drops, and then that water is gray water, which is put into the landscape system of this building and 2 adjacent buildings. So it's an interesting example of where art both has a practical function. In this case, it purifies water to only gray water levels. Still, it's quite an achievement by Buster Simpson, and it's a very beautiful artwork as well. This is Anaheim, California, which I mentioned when I was speaking with the Arts Commission earlier. I like this project because it's at the street, it has a certain modesty but power to it. Anaheim was founded in the 1850s by German settlers who were offered free land if they would come and colonize what had been a Spanish rancho before it had been unnamed land in which the Gabrieleños lived. And so when the artists were told, well, this is what we want you to celebrate the German settlers, one of the artists, Nobi Nagasawa, decided that she was going to celebrate the Gabrieleños, who she called the long-term residents of Anaheim. And so she created artifacts that represented their culture. One of them was a canoe, which is situated permanently in the parking garage. And the city of Anaheim gave up this one stall. And as you all know, parking is pretty valuable. So one of the parking stalls has this boat. She also made concrete planters out of basket that represent baskets. So there were all of these small touches down the street. The A bench, which has rubble from the previous buildings which were demolished. And finally, this is a piece which represents the actual nature of what happened to that settlement. When the German settlers came in the 1850s, they went down to the Santa Ana River and took branches off of they weren't elm trees, I'm blocking the name of the tree now, and put them as their fence Okay, but what happened was the water table was so low that they're birch. They sprouted, and their fences became trees and absorbed all the water, and so their vineyards sort of dried up. So this kind of represents, as people drank water, their water went into the well and fed that tree. Quickly, as was mentioned in my biography, I was involved in something called GLOW, which was an all-night art festival on the beach in Santa Monica, California. It was literally from dusk to dawn. It was just a matter of hours. 3 years of work over in a matter of minutes. This is the spread on the Santa Monica beach. Every year we brought French artists in because this idea for the all-night art festival began in France as Nuit Blanche. And I want to quickly, sorry, running out of time, do a video. Here we go, of one of the pieces for GLOW. This is by Rafael Lozano Hammer, a Mexican-Canadian artist, which I think represents the spirit of GLOW so well that I'm going to let him do the talking for a few minutes. He likes the drama of waiting. Here we go. Where's the sound? Oh, damn, I was hoping I'd get a break for a few minutes. So what Raphael did, there's cameras in little sandboxes that people are standing at. Those cameras take pictures of people's hands in a small sandbox. They're fed up to 2 of the world's biggest projectors held up on cranes. Yeah. And then those images are beamed down onto the real beach. So the scale shifts from here, where people are playing and there's cameras, to the beach itself. So there's this loop between virtual space, real space, and then this amplified space of the projectors. And you have this wonderful sense of play and engagement and community building, and also you're enjoying the beauty of the beach, which is one of the great pleasures of summertime, is that we can be outdoors, sharing public space. So people brought, of course, did the dog show up yet? Some of these people put their little puppy in the, oh yeah, this is a good one. So, you know what? We can't have enough joy. So the more joy we have, the better. There's the dog. People just love this. It was like candy. So I think I'm going to wrap it up with this enigmatic image of a lifeguard tower being subsumed in foam, and say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marc. We have 3 more artists to hear from. Jim Merz is a sculptor who has worked with a variety of mediums, including wood, metal, digital, and mixed media. He specializes in computer-controlled kinetic sculpture as a way to demarcate time and space, and his work has been exhibited both nationally and internationally. Please welcome Jim Merz.
All right. Here are a few pieces of public art that have been influential to me. This is the first piece of public art that I can remember. It's at Cranbrook near Detroit, where my elementary school would take field trips to the Science Museum. And Cranbrook's a pretty interesting melding of art and architecture there. I grew up in the suburbs and loved going downtown to Hart Plaza to see the Jazz Festival and the downtown town. This is the Noguchi Fountain, and it's at the very center of Detroit, right next to the amphitheater. It's monumental, but it's also approachable and interactive. This is the Spirit of Detroit. It's, of course, a much larger-than-life classical figure, but it's also become a kind of mascot for the city. He's been on cars. He's wearing, of course, a Red Wings jersey for their Stanley Cup finals. I went to art school in Ann Arbor, and it's hard to walk by the cube and not give it a spin. People from Ann Arbor won't believe you, though, if you tell them there are actually other cubes around the world. Next is one of my favorite kinetic artists, George Rickey, and his piece in Ann Arbor. Every time this piece catches the wind, or if you give it a little nudge, it changes shape, it changes form, and it really activates this beautiful little courtyard there. The next piece is a two-part sculpture. You can just see the other part here. And this is one of my favorite examples of the art and the landscaping really working together to activate this beautiful little courtyard, little public space there, again in Ann Arbor. Columbus, Indiana is a pretty interesting place, and this is in their Commons building in the heart of the city. It's a kinetic work by Gene Tingley, and of course it's very, there's really a cacophony of movement there in it. And it also inspired a bit of adaptive reuse when they installed a gigantic indoor play structure right next door to it. This is a smaller scale work, and this is my kids, of course, taming the dragon there. And there's a variety of site-specific artistic installations in this little park in Hot Springs. When my family came to Fort Wayne 15 years ago, we didn't know much about the city. As we drove around, we saw Headwaters Park and the Arts Complex campus here, and the DeSuvero, of course, and we thought, this is civilization. We can make a home here. This is my first kinetic sculpture that could actually run for weeks at a time without breaking. Someone enjoyed this a little too much, though, and swiped the computer from it, and so that's why this is a rendering. Strangely, that didn't dim my interest in doing public work. I was an artist in residence at our own Whitney Young Early Childhood Center here in Fort Wayne, where the kids get to do a ton of artwork and have a great art facilities and teachers there. I had this little workshop in the corner of the gymnasium, and kids would come and work on these models of the sculptures with me. And then here's, we're installing the finished piece, and it's really a translation of the children's work into a full-blown kinetic sculpture. And here I'm playing with a remote control to make it move and show all the kids as they're watching this thing that has just been tilted up. I was able to borrow the sculpture to take it to Art Prize in Grand Rapids. You can see on the right here, that little red house is actually a remote control where people can interact with the work, and that makes the big work spin. And Art Prize is really interesting. 100,000 people went past that. Let's see. Here's a proposal for a temporary installation where a group of light-up orbs would float down the canal in Indy. The orbs change color as they float along. This could be fun for a Nuit Blanche kind of event on our rivers, of course. When Art Prize offered their parking structures as a sculpture site, how could I refuse? The city engineer was very helpful, and he gave me this bit of advice. When in doubt, build it stout. Here's another installation of that piece in a park in Zionsville at a thing called an Euphrasic event where poets would read poems about the sculptures. And it's just one example of the interesting people you meet and places you go when you're doing public work. I always imagine myself doing work that engages the public. And here's at Maker Faire in Detroit at the incomparable Henry Ford Museum, where 30,000 people were at Maker Faire, and each one asked, "What is it?" Here's my first large-scale wind-driven piece made to celebrate IPFW's, now PFW's, 50th anniversary. Just a little story, the installation had to be moved down the street when there was an equipment vault discovered at the first site that this was going to go. So just always something coming up with public work. This is a long-running collaboration with Sayaka Ganz. On the left is the original stairwell at the Potter's Wife Gallery, and then there are 4 other different installation sites, and they all bring out something different in the work there. And it's been fun to see it in different sites. And in art school, I thought I'd reached a milestone when some tourists took a selfie in front of my work. This is a rendering of a sculpture I'll be building to celebrate Ivy Tech Fort Wayne's 50th anniversary. And it's a deconstructed version of the school logo, and of course, suitable for selfies.
That should be added to the list of what public art is, suitable for selfies. I like it. Adrian Curry is the founder and CEO of the Art Leadership Center, ALC, as well as the director of the Percussion Theater, instructor of the Steppers, Dancers, and life coach to the student leaders and peer-led instructors. He is taught through various organizations such as Fort Wayne Parks and Recreation, Fort Wayne Community Schools, the Sparks Foundation, the Brandon Foundation, and the Thurgood Marshall Leadership Academy, donating his services throughout this community for more than 15 years. Please welcome Adrian Curry.
What is public art? What is the power of public art? I have been tasked with answering that question. Well, first I'll say I entitled my presentation, Movement is Life. And we are the sum total of the health of all our parts. Our systems come together to create a whole, a body. And a vital force runs through the pathways from these systems. The interconnected or individual parts produce a vital force, which runs through these pathways. Some call them streets, some call them vessels. It doesn't matter. But the space, the people that live next to these pathways feed off this vital energy. So what would happen if this vital energy, or all the people connected to produce more and more vital energy? Well, I say this. The Amaru, from land called Mu, built megaliths like Tamara and Timbuktu, a ket of sun and moon, Machu Picchu, and 42-ton heads with 7 braids down the back. The symmetry of face aligned exact, and figurines found all black to old war paintings with the signature strap. Now we got straps. Now let's double back. Figurines found all black in stacks in caves and mountain ranges. Oh, the rain of plain here named from North Pole to southern terrain, this membrane of mile-high ice. Beyond you find the realm of the original Christ, birth from dark Mother Earth, sent to bring forth light to 196,940,000 square miles of net of plain earth, which came first. Now I and I work in mine for shine to diamond our worth, the Amaru. What is art? What I like to operationally define art as a vehicle that transports coded information throughout these vessels to interact with what I call the parenchyma, or the functional tissue. One may call it a neighborhood. Well, I say, okay, if art is a vehicle, and it also has the function of exchange of information, then I say that our Father art in heaven. Art is the creation. When they say he created the heavens and the earth. Earth, which right there in between the E and the H, you find art. With the coded genetic information of a seed, it sits inside, and this exchange of information occurs, and then there's expression or the manifestation of life. Or how about the heart? which the end is art, which carries genetic information, and when there's an exchange of information, it comes together to produce life. Genotype, the coding, phenotype, the expression. And so what do we want to happen? We want the binding forces from working together to move through the streets, the pathways, to uplift the interstitial or parenchyma. And if those binding forces do not go through this space, what will happen is what we call dis-ease. If there is a blockage, there will be dis-ease. What do I mean? That means the flow is not at ease. That means the parenchyma or the space can no longer feed off of the energy necessary to live for life. And if just an atom does not have that flow of energy, then the part that it makes up, or the whole, will be affected, or will have disease. What do I mean by this? Well, the atom comes together to make molecules, and the molecule makes cells, and the cells make tissues, organ systems, organisms come together to make organizations. The first one we know is family. Families come together to create tribes, nations, empires, the kingdom of heaven that is on earth. The kingdom of heaven that is on earth. Well, earth is a planet. Planets come together to make solar systems, galaxies, universe. The universe is said to sit inside of one atom. So if that one atom is not being nourished properly, the entire system is out of whack. It is in a position to either die slowly or die quickly. You see, in my community, we lack the things that are necessary for our community to function, whether it be a Whole Foods, whether it be a library or a bookstore, or whether it be a hospital. And so therefore I say I am in prison. Although most believe that we've risen, this box that I reside has confirmed my decision and incision as it traveled through space, breaching this outermost fear, a fear that is clear to disappear with fission, a mission that is clear to rear end, which sends signals to be healed and renewed by what's in, defecation to fertilize fornication, to begin nude, revitalization, thus gives sensation to commence what was ended. I am splendid to say that I'm free in this prison, disorder that is long-winded, blowing through bars of lockdown, lifting up gowns to be mended, or to reproduce like kind or like state of mind, only to negate the freight carried by society's mind or society's crime, society's blind, stealing from its extended self to bind, riches to selfish century steps to shine, shelving sense of seeing inside. We are out of time, given through decision to free oneself while living in a light-shining prison, only to reflect our children. We are divine.
Thank you, Adrian. Last but certainly not least, Tim Parsley is chair of the art department and associate professor of studio art at the University of St. Francis School of Creative Arts in Fort Wayne and teaches courses there in mural painting and public art to train the young artists of tomorrow. He's an artist primarily working through painting, drawing, and collage, but also has extensive experience as a public artist and public art educator. He recently completed a nearly 6,000 square foot mural at the Landing in downtown Fort Wayne. You've probably seen it, titled "The Land Was Made for You and Me." Please welcome Tim Parsley.
I don't really know how to follow what just happened, but we got one more to go. Hi, my name is Tim Parsley. I'm a public artist who works with large-scale murals. And over the last 12 years, I've had the privilege of painting a number of murals in Cincinnati, New York, Nairobi, Kenya, and Fort Wayne, Indiana. And my first mural commission that I was offered was through an organization called Artworks. Oh, this is, by the way, two sides of me. You can decide which is the best side. But this is the first mural I was asked to paint, and it's in Cincinnati, Ohio, through an organization called Artworks. It's called The Face of the Arts, and it was intended to celebrate the kind of youthful energy and creative energy of our young people. But after that, more and more murals came because I found I kind of had a knack for this. And the projects that came became more complex, more involved with community input, larger as they went. And I found that this was something that really suited what I did. And so there's just a bunch of examples of these murals that will be kind of going on up here. But I find the work that I'm able to do as a public artist very rewarding in ways that are very different than what I do in my private studio practice. I've also found that public art is very challenging in ways that are different than my private studio practice. Like, it doesn't rain inside my studio. The neighbors aren't yelling at me because I'm painting something they're not interested in. It's just me, right? But public mural painting can be challenging, and those challenges make it tempting to duck back into my private studio and do my own thing. So what are the rewards? For me, there's at least three. One is that through public art, we see an increase in kind of community ownership. And by that I mean that when I'm in my studio working on my own, the neighborhood, strangers, they don't come walking in and say, "You're doing great. We're so proud of you." Nobody comes in and says that, right? It's just me in there. But when you're on the wall and you're working on a large mural that is slowly being built over the course of days and weeks, people walk by. They walk by on their normal path. They see it unfold, and they get excited about it. They say, "What is it going to be? Oh, I'm starting to see it now." And then they get more and more excited. And they're cheering you on, and it's a great connection with the community. But what becomes really interesting is at a certain point, you realize that they've come to own that mural, not just as something that's in their neighborhood, but it's something they feel like they contributed to see happen. They stand there and they bring their friends and say, "Look at our mural," as if they were the ones who created it. And maybe they did. I mean, really, I didn't put the building there. I didn't plan the street. I didn't move into that neighborhood and invest in it over years. I got to put the top coat on the mural that they'd been creating all along. And so that's something I find to be really exciting, is the way that a community just can start to own this thing. And it becomes something something that we made, not just something that I made. Second reward that I've been able to experience is how public art really does provide a kind of arts sustainability. Right, there's my slide. This went a lot slower when I rehearsed it. I'll let it be up there eventually. There it is. By arts sustainability, what I mean is that artists are able to come out of their studio and provide something to their community that they've become particularly skilled and talented at. They can contribute into their neighborhoods, but the community is also able to contribute to them. And that might be as simple as the fact that they can be paid for this, and that artists are able to be supported and find opportunities to sustain themselves. And many times when we think about this as artists, as individuals, we don't know how to afford that, but we are able to, as communities, often resources together to support the artists. So as an art educator, I've felt very passionate about this and wanting my students to understand this. So I've been able to lead workshops on how this is done, and then at the university, begin to bring classes to the table where our students are learning about public art and mural painting. And we have several classes we've offered where the students are being taught from start to finish, from concept to completion, how do they approach a community, how do they talk about what that community is interested in, what are their values, and how can they put together a project. It might be the budget that they're overseeing, it might be the contract that they're signing, but how can they be actually equipped to go out into their communities and begin making a difference. And one of the things that's been most exciting for me to watch is as several of our students have graduated and then gone on and initiated their own projects in their communities, becoming contributing members of their neighborhood, and being able to actually say to their mom and dad, "I got paid for this, and I'm having opportunities." And so I think that the way that the public art can public art can help bring about sustaining of the arts is really unique and powerful. The last, I wanted to mention in that real briefly, just that our students have been able to work with several of the presenters you've already seen. So our first round of that was the project that Alex mentioned earlier, and the Art This Way project, Downtown Alleyway. And so having our students be out there working with us on this was extremely rewarding. And then this semester, I'm working with a group of students who are doing a project at Jefferson Point, but they're also doing a project with Rena's Bridge of Grace, and going out and seeing the work she's doing and seeing what they can do to actually improve neighborhoods. And they've got a small part, but they're very proud to be involved in what she's doing with Bridge of Grace. Well, the last one is this, as far as rewards go, and that is, I think public art has the potential to beneficially interrupt us, to bring a beneficial interruption. Most of the time we think of interruption as something that's rude or unwanted, but sometimes we need to be interrupted, right? And we are creatures of habit. we can easily get into our car and drive home from work and pull into our driveway and realize we didn't even think once about whether that was a red or green light, should I have gone left or right. We just autopilot the whole way. We see the same things every day. We just sort of like let it go by. And there is something about the power of public art to stop us and say, hold up a second. Look at this thing that you weren't ready to see. And the way that can cause inspiration, it can bring challenge to us. Sometimes it's just something we encounter that's kind of weird. And we're not exactly sure where to put it in our mental file folder. But it makes us pause and begin to approach our world differently and see it differently through the eyes of an artist. And I think that that's something that we're able to do here in Fort Wayne, that we're able to do wherever it is that we're at. We're able to provide beneficial interruptions to the monotony and the routine that can sometimes overtake us. So that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you to all of you for coming here tonight and experiencing the PechaKucha with us. Let's hear it again for all of our speakers tonight. Once again, thank you to Arts United for hosting this event tonight. And if you want to stay up to date on the Public Art Master Plan, just keep on checking out that fortwaynepublicart.com. I'm Alyssa Ivinson. It's been wonderful to be with you here tonight. Have a great evening.